Welcome to Propaganda Loves You, the show that asks and answers the question, who is the real Dissa? I'm your co-host for this week, Cody, joined as always by Arthur and Joe.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome back to Propaganda Loves You for this week. Today, we've got a few different things that we actually have, like, way too many things that we want to talk about that we're going to be able to fit into this episode, from Curtis Yarvin being in the news. Like, New Yorker did a profile on him. If you don't know who Curtis Yarvin is, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about him, but he's basically the tech philosopher for, like, J.D. Vance and a lot of the technocrat individuals. When you think about, like, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, like, a lot of people listen to his beliefs, and he's very pro-monarchy.
Curtis Yarvin, tech bro. He loves monarchies.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of monarchies and thinks that the United States should be run by a CEO type person. Actually, we might talk a little bit more about Curtis Yarvin in the future, depending on, how he bubbles up in the news. Behind the Bastards did a 2-part episode on him back in September of 2024, and Ed Helms is the guest on those 2 episodes. That has all the background you need. After listening to those 2 episodes, I kind of felt like I was a crazy person every time I tried to talk about Curtis Yarvin to anyone that had no context. Like, it sounds insane, right? That the Vice President of the United States subscribes to the beliefs of this guy who thinks we should completely get rid of all democracy in the United States and just be run like a tech company. His name's coming up more in the mainstream media, like New Yorker did a profile, so that's out there. And then, the other thing is Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out on Twitter and basically saying that she didn't read the bill that she voted for. The one thing she had an issue with was states not being able to regulate AI for 10 years, apparently. That's a big issue for MTG. And then, but the things that we are going to talk a little bit more in depth about today, there's been conflict going on in India and Pakistan for years, but it flared up over an attack India and Mr. Kashmir that killed like a bunch of Indian tourists in the area. It was like 26, I think. And so when that conflict kicked off, there was a ton of disinformation coming out. So we'll talk about that a little bit and what that looked like. The last thing I'll hit on today is, while I was kind of doing some research on the India piece, I came across a website that presents itself as a disinformation site. Like, it's, hey, we're trying to get all this information together and talk about disinformation and mental health and all these crazy things. But the more I look at the site, the more I think it's actually like a disinfo op in itself. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Normally we do our fact checking to kick things off for the episodes. However, I'm working on improving our fact checker right now. It didn't get me the results that I wasn't comfortable with for this week. So keep working on improving that. And then when we need to, we'll do a couple episodes at a time or something like that. So, but anyway, yeah, that's the plan for today. But before we get into like any of our A topics, Arthur, Joe, anything you guys want to share for the week?
I read right after I said it, it came out the day after, where Melania said, I've claimed that, maybe Trump hated Harvard because Barron didn't get in. But Melania says that Barron didn't even apply.
Oh, I believe her.
So,
do you believe her?
yeah, I believe her. The crypto coin Ponzi scheme artist.
100%.
Didn't want to go to a stupid school anyway. Think of like political relevant things. I've just been living in hell with allergies. It's apparently the Lynn County, our neighboring county, is the grass seed capital. And this week is the week where they cut it all. And so it just puts it into the air. My eyes get super itchy, but that doesn't seem relevant.
I was going to say, like, when you said it's like allergies, like it's bug season where we are. It's called black fly season in the Adirondacks. So it's May through June. Usually by July 4th, it's not too bad. But yeah, they're just starting to come out and really starting to bite. So it's like you got to plan your trips accordingly.
So just avoiding the outside is what we're doing.
Yeah, so for certain times, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
DC is kind of swampy, if you haven't heard that before, but we got lots of mosquitoes out right now, so just being outside, it's like you need a bug net not to get bit, basically.
Yeah. I was down in your neck of the woods, Joe, for a birthday party this weekend. I was in the Inner Harbor, and it looked like they built something new down there. It's like a floating bog near the National Aquarium. It's kind of neat. It's like this free exhibit that you can go into, and it tries to mimic what that area actually looked like, back before it was all industrialized. So it's got like this floating bog, and they've got like a bunch of like old oyster shells and stuff like that all laid out, and all these different things you can read. So it's kind of cool and also depressing, because there was like a sign at one of the spots that was like, "You are here." And it showed that basically, yeah, this entire area was all just like wetland bog, like the whole thing. And now it's just this little tiny man-made piece, Inner Harbor, to show you what it was like at one point, I guess.
Yeah, love being reminded of how much we've ruined this place.
I was just going to say, I read up that there were 4 Oregon cities that were named on this sanctuary jurisdiction list that Trump put out about, all these cities that come up that aren't in compliance with the immigration policies. Eugene, Oregon was one of the big cities that is not compliant, I guess. And then I've seen a lot more activity actually on some subreddit like Eyes on Ice and on Reddit Portland and stuff. And there's a lot of like activity happening still. So just really scary still. But yeah, non-compliant city.
Did they come out with like is there specific action they're saying, like, is it taking funding away or something like that for those cities?
I think that they're going to receive a formal notice, and then who knows what's going to happen. Because I don't think there's going to be any movement on either side. It's not like our governor Kotek is going to all of a sudden just be like, sure, we'll be in compliance. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Actually, mentioned subreddits. I was looking at one of the many subreddits that's been stood up, like the 5051. Maybe it was like a regional, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I did see something that made me feel a little bit better. It was like more people calling out posters who had like, an account created 4 days ago, and they're saying, "Oh, don't go to this protest because it's a trap," or stuff like that. And like, it feels like there was I don't know, over the weekend, maybe just a bit more online literacy or like people that, are aware of like those tactics and like calling it out immediately in the subreddits. And like every comment was like, yeah, this guy's full of crap. Like, so that was, good to see, at least people are recognizing,
Yeah,
I guess, tactics there.
definitely. And I've seen some videos lately too of like communities, like the one in San Diego. There's one that went viral where community kind of stood up to ICE and actually got them to leave the neighborhood. So it's really nice to see that solidarity.
And there was I can't remember the person's name. Who's the head of Homeland Security? Is Kristi Noem, but who's the head of ICE? Is that like?
Oh, right. Todd Lyons is the head. The
Todd
acting
Lyons?
director.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I saw him. He was answering questions, and then someone asked a question about why ICE agents are always masked and not providing identification, and they're allowed to do that for some reason. And so the response that came back is kind of predicted, right? It's like he's saying that, ICE agents have been doxxed and their lives have been threatened when they don't have face coverings on or something like that. But he immediately turned it back around. And he's like, so like I can't remember the exact wording, but it was trying to insinuate that, people didn't care about their safety. And it's like, no, it's like, you need to know that the person that's trying to arrest you is actually a federal officer. Like, you can't just have people running around the country, like just throwing masks on and arresting people. It's like, all I could think of is The Watchmen, like the HBO series Watchmen. If you guys saw that, it's the same. It's creepily the same. I don't know, but
Oh, it's extremely fascist. It's overtly fascist. The idea that the people with guns who the government pays to come kidnap you are afraid that they're going to be identified and therefore be in danger somehow. Like, the circular logic of it is just wild. They're the people that are scary, and then they're trying to act like they're afraid, oh, somebody's going to find out who I am online. You're running around in a mask kidnapping people. Like, that's your job. Sorry if that's offensive to people, but that's your job. put on a mask and go kidnap people. I can't defend that. I can't find a way to defend that.
Oh no, it froze.
Cody's froze. What do we do?
Just keep talking about the Gestapo, I guess. I know it's so crazy that they're fearful of. They are just the scariest people without, and they're not even thinking about what they're doing, like no morality or something.
It's weird. Like, I don't know. You couldn't pay me enough money to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I remember seeing the video of that Turkish grad student. I think she's
Yeah.
at Tufts University when they just sort of ran up on her.
That
I
was
saw the video of
horrifying.
that. It's like they're not even trying to identify themselves. They're being weird, and it's really scary.
Yeah. I know, and they bring women specifically to like try to disarm other women. And, like they have all these weird
Oh yeah.
mental tactics. It's just so gross. They must like
Good
I'd like to see like
slimy.
a psychological profile on one of the ICE agents. I bet they're like
Right?
they got to be targeting people who are just killing dogs at a young age or something.
It's like there's definitely like some psychopathy or something going on. Like you got to be able to dissociate on a big level. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. People are. I don't know. Personhood is really important. You know. Like
Yeah.
I know you've got a background in philosophy, and it's like the idea of personhood is like a really important thing to value in each
Yeah,
person. And
definitely.
to be able to do that, you have to like totally wipe it away and be like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Snatch, snatch, snatch. Crazy. There he is.
I lost you guys for a while, but I think the recording kept
Yeah.
going, so hopefully you guys just kept.
There might be
Yeah.
some jokes in there, you know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll cut it in. Are the jokes just about how shitty my internet is? Well, I heard what you said at the end there, and I felt like that was a great way
Yeah,
to close out on
definitely.
that. Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.
Tired of waiting for real wars to resolve? Want to win now? Online?
Introducing Fog of War, the only AI combat simulator that turns your favorite video game clips into breaking news footage.
From Call of Duty to Battlefield 6, Fog of War overlays real flags, fake explosions, and bold claims of conquest, then uploads directly to your favorite nationalist Telegram channel.
Generate a deep fake of your enemy surrendering. Upload a Fortnite dogfight. Watch the bots eat it up.
Perfect for rapid propaganda deployment, hiding tactical failures, or manufacturing morale.
Used by both sides of the May 2025 India-Pakistan crisis, and now available to you.
Fog of War. When you control the footage, you control the facts.
May destabilize regions, strain ceasefires, and result in unintended escalations. Use with strategic irresponsibility.
All right, cool. Well, let's jump on to our 8 topics for this week. To start, the first thing we kind of want to talk about today is how disinformation has been kind of like propagated in the context of the India-Pakistan conflict, specifically this most recent flare-up, as we mentioned, over the attack in India-administered Kashmir. So just as a little bit of background, I'm going to walk kind of through what occurred there. So as I mentioned, there was a attack on April 22nd, 2025, targeting tourists, and it resulted in the death of 25 Indian nationals and a local resident. So this kicked off a pretty major military operation from India that they called Operation Sindoor that was launched on May 7th, 2025. So like the big thing here, there's a lot of retaliation coming, obviously, because of the strike. This is still kind of occurring. Well, I think they're at a ceasefire now, but the disinformation portion of this is still occurring. But the thing I want to mention, just kind of like walk through the timeline of everything that occurred. April 22nd was the attack. India launched their operation against Pakistan May 7th. And that's kind of when they started seeing this massive surge of disinformation related to what was occurring here. There obviously was a lot of military strikes and whatnot, but the thing that people started seeing, and this is actually something that happened in the Ukraine conflict as well, like after it kicked off, there was immediately a ton of accounts that were posting images that looked like entire airports like on fire, with all the planes completely on fire, and saying there's this massive attack that occurred. They're saying there's a lot of accounts that were pushing like, oh, we're going to be in like the Pakistan capital of that area by X date or something like that. Like, so it's like basically pushing like, oh, like India's winning this. Like, there's been a ton of conflict or a ton of battles and trying to push all of these basically like completely false or made up attacks or victories, right? Like trying to really ramp up that portion. And so a lot of that was, AI content that they saw. The Indian government kind of like asked for over 8,000 accounts to be blocked on May 8th related to spreading misinformation around this. And so, yeah, on May 10th is when the actual ceasefire kind of brokered for this specific conflict, but the disinformation operations are continuing on, right? This isn't actually done, is what we would say here. So yeah, what was actually occurring here in the thing? There's a bunch of different tactics being employed for disinformation. We talked about AI content or fake content that was being promoted, instances of a video falsely claiming a Indian fighter jet being shot down by Pakistani forces. That was actually footage from Syria in 2020. And so they're taking old war footage and repackaging it, making it look like it's from the current conflict in India. They also used video game footage as proof of different attacks as well. We talked about AI, deepfakes, and AI generated imagery. That started coming out significantly during this period of time as well. This is including like videos of political leaders, one that was supposedly showing the Pakistan prime minister admitting defeat. And these are going viral in India, really kind of stoking up that like nationalist, we are winning the victory type thing that they're pushing significantly. And then there were also, deepfakes that were of Indian Prime Minister Modi, right? So like, it's interesting to me, just this entire thing, just because like then we're starting to see, we saw some in Ukraine with like, there would be deep fakes of Zelensky, right? Pretty frequently that were put out there. And now it's just this very short conflict that kicked off over that time period, even though there has been a significant history, right, between Pakistan and India. Immediately we're seeing deepfake videos of political leaders on both sides, right? Like the speed at which this is turning and coming out and the amount of disinformation that's being pushed in this scenario. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit. Like it's just how quickly this is able to occur. And I think a lot of that has to do with how easy it is for people to generate this content or repackage content using AI, right? Like we're starting to see the speed effect of AI being put into this, I guess is what I'm saying. So let me pause there for any comments or anything you guys have so far.
Scary how AI and deep fakes and disinformation, it's like becoming part of the playbook of war rather than like a response to it or like a symptom of it. It's like, it's actually just a calculated thing now in the playbook to do this. And it's like, yeah, we need more like what you were kind of saying at the beginning here about like media literacy and not just like spotting fake stuff, but I guess somehow deducing who benefits from it and how you kind of put that together and what the narrative controlling it is. I guess things that we're all doing in this podcast, but it's just, that's really scary and wow, very quick.
Yeah. I mean, like fog of war has always been a thing. Like it's hard to know exactly what's going on. And I think this just cranks it up to, I don't even know I don't even know if you can chart it, honestly, like how difficult it's going to be to tell like what's actually real when people are putting out like, oh, this is a false flag from India, or, oh, like, putting out information saying that like hackers have taken down the majority of India's grid, like completely false news, right? But it's going to inflame tensions. It's going to make people scared. It's going to absolutely, it's going to create more and more chaos, especially with how much people are online today.
It's wild. I agree with everything you guys are saying about how dangerous it is and the speed at which the technology can be used to spread false information that misleads people. I guess for me, like, even though the technology is getting more powerful and scary, powerful groups have always weaponized information in a way that manipulates populations. Like, have you ever heard, I think there was a famous novel with this title, I can't remember who the author was, but it's a popular phrase in pop culture about World War I, all's quiet on the Western Front. Have you sort of heard that phrase before, all's quiet on the Western Front? I think it's a novel, but the reason I'm thinking about it is because in Howard Zinn's book, People's History of the United States, he talks about that phrase in the media and how it was used in World War I. where you basically had trench warfare, right, in Europe. And even though the lines of battle were maybe moving like half a mile or so a day, like not much geographical progress was being made on either side, the media back in Britain and the US would say all's quiet on the Western Front, despite the fact that like 100,000 people died that day in trench warfare. They would say all's quiet on the Western Front, nothing really to see here. And so they're using the media to sort of quell and keep calm the population whose taxes are supporting this super, like the most violent war you could imagine going on every day. World War I was extremely violent, like so many people dying every day. But then the media and the people who control it use it to make everyone feel, oh, it's all, nothing really happened today, nothing to worry about here. And so I'm just thinking about how through history, like we've always been, it's like you're saying, the fog of war in the immediate aftermath of something going on. Sometimes it's hard to immediately sort fact from fiction, especially when stuff is moving this fast. But with literacy, with contextual awareness of what's going on in each situation, we can put the ducks in the row after the fact and figure out what's going on here. But yeah, I guess not really a silver lining, just to say that we've always been influenced in that way. But the AI capabilities now make what they can do to our perception of reality a lot more scary.
And I think it's interesting, Joe, that example, just because the media at the time had an intent to try and make people not as afraid about the war, or just feel like, oh, things are going okay, or they're not going badly if nothing's happened, and not realizing, like you said, thousands of people are dying. In this case, it's the opposite, right? Like, it's let's ramp up the populace. Let's make people afraid. Let's make people either super nationalist and want this conflict, like, is really what the intent behind a lot of this is, right? It's trying to make the conflict even more, one, trying to make things confusing, make, people not quite sure what's going on, but also ramping up of pro-nationalist feelings and whatnot.
No, that's a good point too. Like that it can be used either way to like keep people calm when they shouldn't be calm, or to like ramp things up and make it more chaotic and messy, for sure. Which is, again, why the literacy matters. You got to understand which groups have power, what they're trying to do to you, whose interest it's in for you to get all, riled up about this or that issue.
Yeah.
I always blame Britain whenever I think about India and Pakistan, because, they just set that up when they left. It was all one country before they colonized it, and they're like, most of you guys are Muslim, most of you guys are Hindu, we're just going to draw a little line here and see you later.
That usually
Well,
works.
here we are.
Yeah, that's worked out just about everywhere that Britain did that before, right? Yeah, so I think the thing I was trying to connect that to earlier was just that, a lot of the sophistication of these different disinformation campaigns and the amount of content that comes out and everything like that really points back to state-sponsored or like nation-state led activities, right? With the sophistication that they're seeing there too. And it's not necessarily, I'm sure some of it's Pakistan, I'm sure some of it's India, right? Like putting some of this information out, like depending on what the content is, but there's probably others in that realm too.
No, it's a really important topic. And I think there are so many conflicts going on all over the world all the time, and it's really hard to keep track of everything. But that's one reason why I love Democracy Now! Like as a news organization, they're always trying to get random people in the middle of those conflicts, get them a microphone, get them an interview. Let's actually hear directly from the people on the ground living through whatever is happening and get their direct first person take from it. So yeah, keep tuning into Democracy Now! If you can.
For sure. Just to kind of close out the section on the India-Pakistan conflict, I'm just going to run down kind of like the different types of information. We mentioned this before, the types of different disinformation that was used, doctored or recycled visuals. We mentioned that, like the example of the old Syrian jet, Gaza fireball image, and that was put out on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TV, like pretty much anywhere you could see. We mentioned video game footage and edited clips presented as combat, also on pretty much all of those social medias. The AI-generated deepfakes of both the leaders of Pakistan and India, as well as fabricated visuals from the military side. The false claims of invasion or attack from either side, and then also mentioned the false flag narratives saying that India conducted this attack or did this operation themselves in order to justify their attack on or their retaliation against Pakistan in that scenario. So I think the main takeaways or impact here is similar to the intents that we'd seen in Ukraine again. For a lot of these disinformation, right? So there's a lot of eroding trust in the government and institutions, escalating tensions between the two. And then it's also, at least in the case of Ukraine, a lot of that information is also a way to push for negotiations, right? Like by pushing this out, trying to shape that narrative, you can influence negotiations between the two countries. So, yeah, I think that's all I'm going to talk about for this. So just, another example there that's not one of the common ones that we've talked about so far. We've spent a lot of time talking about Russia, Ukraine, China, Iran, North Korea, and the US. So there's other places in the world where this is being used in other conflicts. So we wanted to kind of look at one that wasn't, maybe a US-centric event. Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.
Are you a shadowy influence operation with zero credibility, no named staff, no funding transparency, and a suspicious spike in activity after 6 months of radio silence?
You sound like a perfect candidate for Pressroom Pro, the anonymous authorship tool trusted by everyone from fake think tanks to questionably funded alliances.
With our patented cloak and publish tech, you can mass dump thousands of articles in under 48 hours. No editorial team required. Just hit upload and watch legitimacy happen.
Need credibility? Just copy-paste a Brookings citation and pray no one checks the footnotes.
Pressroom Pro even scrubs metadata, routes your traffic through 7 servers in Estonia, and auto-generates a broken Pinterest link. Because real institutions don't need about pages.
Your mission, obscure. Your authorship, unknowable. Your impact, undeniable. Pressroom Pro. Disinformation at the speed of trust.
Pressroom Pro is not affiliated with any known government, NGOs, or the real DISA. Probably.
Next topic I want to hit on. While I was looking into some of the different sources and trying to dig on the India conflict, I came across a website. The website is called DISA. Joe, do you ever work with DISA or know about those guys from your time where you were active?
What I know about DISA is that when I got stationed at Fort Meade, there was a perfectly decent 9-hole golf course there that me and some teammates went to every now and then they totally demolished it and put up all these ugly buildings and huge parking lots and stamped some acronym that said DISA on the building. And that's about as much as I know about it.
We are adamantly against DISA now. That is horrible.
Not only did they take away the golf course, but also the running trail that I actually really liked. It was the only wooded running trail where you could actually, you had trees.
Yes,
it was
I
nice
forgot
and
about
cool.
the trail.
Yeah.
I fight for, the wood chip running trails because it's a lot lower impact on the knees than street or sidewalk. So that's pretty important. Another reason we hate DISA.
Yep. So anyway, so when I saw this site, which is also called DISA, I was kind of surprised. DISA, in the context of what we were just talking about, is the Defense Information Systems Agency. It's not really important for this conversation other than the fact that, this site happened to pick a acronym that is very, very, well known for other things. It doesn't really line up with what this site is actually called. So this site is called Disinformation Social Media Alliance. So you might think it should be DSMA or something like that, but they picked DISA for some reason. Okay. So that was the first thing that just looking at it kind of was that's weird. Why would you pick that? And then when I started looking through what was actually on the page itself, right? It's presenting itself as a centralized location where you can learn all about different disinformation or campaigns, as well as it's got articles on here about mental health. It talks about social media quite a bit. It's got these different sections in here. When I started looking through the actual articles themselves, right? I'm seeing tons and tons of articles that are posted same day, 0 comments on any of them. And they are all from Pressroom. That's the publisher for all of these contents. Right. So let's just
Oh
open
yeah, I
all
know
that.
that guy.
Yeah, press room, right? It's common. So that was like a red flag number one as I was looking at this. Strange, right? Like, okay. So then I tried to find an about page or who we are or anything like that. Nothing like that exists on this website. There is nothing to point back to who is putting any of this information together or putting this information out. So that was red flag number two. So then I was like, okay, well, let's take a look at the content that it's got, right? Like, when did this all start? And it's got 810 pages of different articles, I think just under whichever section this is. Let's just go to disinformation section for a second here. And we'll scroll down. So like 240 pages of disinformation articles. So I jumped to the end of that to see like, okay, where is this starting? This all started December 16th, 2024 is what it looks like from when the articles started appearing on the website. There are thousands and thousands of articles on here. And if you jump into one, right, just going into one article, the articles, the way they're written to me reads like they're all like this. They're very formatted the same. Some have like the bullet matching pieces. Like it looks like AI or yeah, it could be AI generated information for some of these articles. Just the way it's written. There are no sources. There's nothing here on where this information came from. However, some of these articles, you can actually find them in legitimate news sites. So like I don't have the one that I picked out yesterday. Actually, I think I could probably find it quick, but so some of these articles are real from other news sites, but they don't credit those news sites and they just have them basically rip the content, put it back in here and present it as if it's coming from whatever this press room is. So it's like an aggregator, right? So that's another red flag, right? Like there's no sourcing on any of this. Some of it's coming from, other news sites without any attribution to them. And so like I decided to dig a little bit more, right? So this is the Disinformation Social Media Alliance is what they call. So you would think that they would have a presence on social media. And they do have links up here to like Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram, right? When you click on those, it's non-functional. It takes you right back to the homepage for Disim. So it doesn't actually transport you to any social media. They don't have social media. I've tried every one of these different links that they've got. Every single link is broken. It just brings you straight back to this homepage, except for the social media links that allow you to post their content. If you want to post their content, if you go into an article, you can share it, and that link actually works. So, like you can go and you can share their articles on social media, but you can't actually find them on social media anywhere. And then what was the other thing on here that was interesting to me? Yeah. So they've got like this newsletter that doesn't work. If you go down and you look at their privacy policy and click on that, it has a bunch of information about like, oh, if you log into this site or you leave comments, like here's how we handle your data and whatnot. There's no way to leave comments. So it's got like the bubble on each article, like saying like, oh, like there could be comments here. There's no way to actually leave a comment on anything that they have. So anyway, this is just super interesting to me for a bunch of reasons. One of them just being like, this is presenting as a thing that could combat disinformation and what this looks like to me. And I would love for someone from this site to correct us and tell us that they're actually a legitimate organization. They're just working on their website, right? But what this looks like to me is a way to seed disinformation into a website that looks semi-legitimate and can then be spread from there. So the only other place that this was found, like I was doing some searching on this to try and see if I could find like anyone else that had seen this site, anyone that had information on it. The only place that this specific website is mentioned is actually, it was cited in a Brookings Institute report. One of the articles on this site was cited by the Brookings Institute. I don't know if that article is legit or not. I have to go back and find it and look at it and dig into that a little bit more. But the point I'm trying to make here is if this is a fake site and if this is being run by someone intentionally to spread disinformation, now it has some legitimacy because you have an institute like Brookings Institute that's citing this information, right? regardless of if that specific article was pulled from somewhere else is legitimate, it doesn't matter. You're legitimizing this site by having that citation there. So anyway, that was kind of a lot for me. But yeah, any thoughts, guys? Are we going to use this for all of our disinformation research from now on? What do you think?
On December 27, 2024, DISA published The Role of Technology in Combating Disinformation. It was cited by the Brookings Institution in January 2025, Democracy Playbook 2025. That's what it's titled. So I think this is a call for Brookings to go back and get rid of this. This is unbelievable. There's no citation, there's no author, there's no credibility at all to any of these things. And I think, we got to at Brookings Institution,
Probably. Oh,
Yeah,
but there
that's-
is
that's scary.
advertising, right, for crypto or something like this here.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, I was going to say so embarrassing for Brookings Institution. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Media literacy is so important because, like you're saying, if you're just skimming over it, it has this veneer of legitimacy. It looks sleek. It looks like a normal aggregator site. And so, like, this is like I teach first year college writing, and this is a lot of it is like explaining why you can't use this kind of thing in your research paper. Like trying to explain the difference between this and something like, I don't know, Reuters or AP News versus like a peer-reviewed publication. Like there are different layers of credibility that publications have to go through. And so what you're pointing out, especially with like the author, how everything is just press room, there's no named journalist you could point to with credentials. You have no idea what the editorial policy is on this site. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and assume it's somebody clumsily putting together a news aggregator. There's no information about how the information is assembled, how the publication process works. Most places you can do a little digging and figure out what their review and publication process is like. You have editors that cover different topics. You have to get approval from your editor to write about a topic, and then the editor reviews your copy, and you go through these layers. Depending on what kind of publication it is, all the way up to like a peer-reviewed academic publication. There's double-blind peer review. You don't know who's reviewing your work. They don't know your name. There are all these checks in place to prevent biases and influence from taking over the publication process. And this is why it's so important to understand the different ways you get your information. Because if you're not even, if you don't have your eyes or ears tuned to be a little bit suspicious, you're not going to catch stuff like this. You're going to see the information that automatically agrees with your opinion, and you're going to repost it without thinking about it because it feels good to have something confirm your opinion. And media literacy is kind of a really slow and tedious thing to get people to take seriously. But stuff like this is a great example.
It feels just so nefarious to do this on a site that's like trying to say it's helping with disinformation. It's just like, I don't know, extra evil in my mind. It's just like, but yeah, Joe, like unless people are really doing that, like these types of sites, like they're going to spin up so quickly, and like the amount of content that they've got on here, like there's no way some of this isn't AI generated. I really don't think that. I'm going to dig into it more and see if I can prove that and whatnot. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like 100% agree. And it's just going to continue to get harder, which I think also goes back to what we had talked about a while ago, which is like, if you can find some sites like, we've talked a lot, or Joe, you've talked a lot about Democracy Now, you've talked about Drop Site News, there's like, if you can find those things that you trust and have good journalistic standards, stick with that. And then, venture outside, but, make sure you're going back to something that and trust before you make a bold claim one way or the other. But
Thanks for the Drop Site recommendation, by the way. I get their newsletter now. I love that.
Got to check in on your mental health from time to time if you're getting their newsletters. Like they do great work, but it is so depressing sometimes. It's just like awful thing after awful thing after awful thing. But great organization.
please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.
When you cite truth, you reinforce knowledge. But when you cite us,
You launder your reputation.
Heritage Vault is the archival authority trusted by questionable websites worldwide. Just one reference from our democracy playbook and poof, your anonymous propaganda blog is now a peer-reviewed powerhouse.
Don't worry if your domain is barely operational, uses AI-generated nonsense, or doesn't list any human staff.
We don't vet sources. We amplify narratives.
Need credibility fast? Download our new plugin, Footnote Forgery. It cross-sites your content with whatever think tank sounds old and white enough to get away with it.
Heritage Vault, because history should work for you.
Endorsement by Heritage Vault does not guarantee factual accuracy, ethical integrity, or resistance to subpoenas.
Well, I think that's everything on this for now. Like I said, I'm going to try and dig into this a little bit more. But I guess before we go for the week, we do have a couple things to plug. You know, we are in the middle of the disinformation deep dives, but we're going to take another week break from that this week. And I think we're going to do a book club episode for this Thursday. I want to see Joe or Arthur, either you guys want to plug that or talk about that a little bit. I think we've mentioned it, but yeah, probably give a good heads up for what's coming for anyone that wants to listen.
Yeah. Definitely. We're doing When Affirmative Action Was White, an untold history of racial inequality in the 20th century America. And it tackles the New Deal era, specifically the 30s and 40s. And it's really kind of rephrasing and maybe taking a new lens and approach to some of the bills that were passed at the time and how they did have a skew racially and how the government kind of impacted that and how that plays out in today's culture.
That first conversation we did, the intro and chapter 1, I don't really remember some of our big points, but I remember having a really good conversation about that. But yeah, Arthur covered it all. So end of comment.
Yeah. Well, in the intro, you have a really nice intro on Ira Katznelson in the book. You kind of went into professorship and the whole system. So that was cool too.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Good point. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us.
If you enjoy the show, help us spread the word. Leave a rating or review and share it with your friends, family, or anyone who would get something out of these conversations.
Your ratings, reviews, and shares help this show grow. And the more people listening, the harder it is for propaganda to win.
So until next time.
Stay aware, stay safe, and remember,
Propaganda loves you.